Yes, now, and welcome back to episode 154 of the Top Loaded Podcast. And I've got a lot of things to talk about this thing, a few interesting talking points that I wanted to get into, and also my review of the Dublin card show, which was an absolute blast. But I'll get into that in more detail shortly. But before we get into this episode, a massive thanks yet again to the guys over at Third Down UK for powering up this episode of the Top Loaded Podcast. Whether you need card supplies, custom card stands, great preparation kits, whatever you may need, they will have you covered. So go and check out their page, check out their website, or even check out their shop. And whilst you're there, use the code TTP10 at checkout to get 10% off. And there's no other place to start apart from the most recent Dublin card show, which was a week and a half ago, which was a fantastic experience. And it was quite an intriguing one for me personally, as this was the first time I was traveling outside of Europe, like actually England, for a card show. And I know it's not that far afield. There's going to be similarities between English shows and an Irish show. But I was pleasantly surprised. It was a very busy show. Last year's show, so 2024 show, they had 1,500 attendees. This year they had 3,000. So that was another very surprising. I was joining the queue, got there about 10 minutes after the queue moved like quickly, about 25 minutes to get in. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was a very different experience. I would say probably the one to compare it to, if I was comparing it to London, obviously it wasn't as busy as London. Very different venue, um, very busy as well. I think Pokemon done very, very well at the show. Very similar to like London, but there was quite a few sports cards tables. But it was quite a different experience. It was more of, it weren't just a card show. There was a lot of like football shirts, different interactive bits. Obviously, you had tops there. They're at most shows now, so get used to like what they bring. But very good show. I'll show a couple of my pickups later on in the show. Some very big ones and an unbelievable gift from a very good friend of mine. But yeah, talking about the actual breakdown of the show. Started at 10 o'clock, I believe. Run to about 4. It was one of them that would I recommend going. Definitely, it's a great experience, especially if you're going to make like a couple of days of it. So, like the actual festivities, I would say commenced the Friday night in a sports bar in the city, doing a trade night. The guys over at Soccer obviously run the Dublin Card Show, put some food on as well. It was great. It was a really nice experience that because you're talking to all the collectors that you normally see, but on the day of a show, it can get very busy in terms of not being able to talk to people. So having that time to sit down, have a Guinness, have some food, talk cars, potentially get some deals done was a fantastic experience and one that probably will take for me for quite a while in the card world. Um, like having that aspect of it, there was a trade night Saturday night, but I had a flight the Saturday night, so I didn't make the trade night after the event. But obviously, moving on now to the Saturday, obviously I was just in as general admission, so queued up, went in, had a walk around, and for people who don't know, there's quite a few good vlogs. If you want to see more about the show, check out one of my mates LGL video on YouTube. Very good video of vlogging experience. I've got a very short TikTok if you want to see little bits of the show. So as you walk in, obviously it's a massive rectangular room, quite spacious in the middle. So as soon as you walked in, you had tops there with their swap wall, the create your own e-card, then they had Showtime boxes. But then behind that was like a bit of a trading area, like some tables that you can stand at. And then it was left and right islands, quite close together. So it was very busy. Mixture of sports and Pokemon. Very, very interesting show in terms of knowing just how strong Pokemon is. If you're in England, Scotland, Wales, or the Emerald Isles itself. So moving away from Pokemon, obviously, my main focus is sports. Did see quite a range of mix. It was mainly I didn't see much non-football sports wise. Can't really remember seeing any of the American sports at all. Similar to a London of you won't get an abundance of American sports, but you get quite a few tables. You see the odd few sports here and there, different ones. Couple of vintage tables for the vintage collectors, but it was predominantly modern sports. there. So quite in terms of actual cards available, I'd say it's not too dissimilar to a London card show in terms of what you'd been able to buy there. Good range, obviously, from me being a bit biased from a women's perspective. There's very, very little women's cards available. I was going on the premise of trying to get a Katie McCabe card, obviously the Arsenal player, but Irish captain. Managed to pick up one of them, which I'll show later on. But is it worth the trip? Yes, because I don't believe card shows we've said it on here multiple occasions, depending if it's me or a guest of the podcast or good friends who have come on. Card shows are not just about the card show; it's about the experience, and it's such a good experience to be able to get out to Ireland. Such a great city. If anyone's never been to Dublin, heavily recommend it, especially for a card show. Creating memories with people that you've met through cards is always up there. Talking to people about cards, it's just an enjoyable experience. And obviously, money is not easy to come by in the modern world. But for the grand scheme of things, if you're looking at doing like a national, you're probably looking at like £2,000 worth of travel and accommodation. I had upgraded flights, so it was like 70 quid return. Hotel was like 120, so I was hotel and flights for less than 200. Obviously, got a bit of a budget, but it's probably not too dissimilar to what I would have spent getting to a London card show. Hotel's about the same, and then if I was getting the train, it's probably about another 30 quid. So it's not too dissimilar, really. But yeah, I've got to say a shout out to a few people who just made the trip very great. From my perspective, obviously, Real Harry's World, Lav, Bart's, and GBW for the Friday, obviously LGL, Church of Cards, and plenty of others on the Saturday. But just being able to chill in the city on the Friday, having a couple of drinks, we was literally watching the golf. It was such a nice experience having some Guinness. And then the card show the next day as well. Fantastic experience. Picked up some lovely cards, met some other people. Um, and it's just, I think it's one of them you don't realize how much the hobby has an impact on your day-to-day life and like relationships you build through the hobby until you go to these shows. And a lot of people that you do speak to now are through the hobby. So like I say, a massive congratulations to the guys at Soccer Cards United for putting on such a fantastic show. Dublin 2026, if I'm available, I will be there. Be another great experience. I'm hoping to be able to get to that one. But moving on from card shows, obviously I'll show you some pickups later on. Obviously, this is not high end, but for us women's collectors, there was some more important things. Here we go. Adrenaline XL. I know people start turning those up, but that is quite significant for us collectors. This it's obviously not a high end, it's quite entry level set, but this is the first women's Super League card set available. We've had 2 sticker books. This is the first card set, so moving in the right direction in terms of that. And people know how little women's stuff there is to collect, so that's been great fun ripping some packs of that recently. So I can't wait to see what they do with the license with that. Moving on now to some news within the card world, and there's always some news out there. We move on to Tops now. Tops announcing, I believe it's after 30,000. It's either 30,000 or 50,000. I think it's 30,000 cards ordered for Tops now. They'll put on some parallels. I don't want to sound harsh on Tops, but basically, if they make $300,000 printing Tops Now's cards, they're going to throw in an extra, I think, like 100 parallels, which is nice of them. But obviously, they are the more successful Tops Nows. Obviously, there's quite a few. Lamine Yamal, Rodri, Bonmati, to name a few. We're still waiting for. We haven't seen them. Just a few people in America magically get their parallel 6 months before anyone else. But I'm not going to go into that in depth. Some of the sets that are on a very Premier League Prism, no confirmed date. Selects, no confirmed date. So if you're waiting on them, don't hold your breath because they've all got no release dates. The one set that had released is a new FC Barcelona set, which, yes and no of why I like it. Yes, there's some really cool cards in there that are different. Seeing Johan Cruyff in the Barcelona shirt, one of the most, I'd argue, say the most influential man on modern day football. Getting some cards again, which is fantastic to see. There's some interesting cards as well, in terms of they do net relics, which sounds good until you realise that some people have the net relics weren't even playing at the time of that net. Like personally speaking, I'd rather. I think on the back it says this goal, this net was used in the last game at the new camp before the redevelopment, and I think Gavi scored the goal in the net. That's really cool if it's a Gavi card, but when you have a Messi net relic and there's a 99.9% chance that he never even played in Spain during the use of these nets. It's a bit pointless, but still very nice cards with some very nice booklets that we yet to see because a lot of them are redemptions. They're quite cool. Another quite cool one is you can on the Barcelona website you can buy actual seats from the new camp before the redevelopment. There's actually some redemptions in the set as well to actually get one of the seats. So if you get very lucky with one of them redemptions, you get a seat. I don't know if it comes made up. I don't know what you do with it, but you get some nice seats from the new camp. I think the price point of that was about £160 for the standard one. I think you get one auto, one relic, between 3 and 4 numbered. But yet again, with them kind of releases, the cards are absolutely battered. And I know it's one of them that is probably a massive manufacturing issue, something way above my pay grade. But surely there's got to be a solution for not putting cards in a certain pack layout or box layout that just absolutely destroys the card. I'm seeing cards get opened from the packs and they're really bad. They're not grading higher than an 8. They're not grading higher than sometimes could even be 7s because there's like peeling and everything. Something's got to be done that when cards are coming out the packs, you're not thinking, oh, will it grade higher than an 8? You want to be seeing if a card could grade a 10. So that would be quite intriguing in the long run to see what happens with certain packaging. And moving on to one of my what discussion points I want to talk about quite a bit. Is it because I'm bitter? Probably yes. But I've recently sent off a PSA submission. I'm not going to go too much into the cards because I'm going to be doing quite a bit of content when they come out. But there's always the age-old debate of one of ones with PSA. Do you just grade them normally and hope to get a high grade, a 9 or a 10? Or do you just authenticate them? And I'm not trying to throw accusations at PSA. And some people might agree, some people might disagree. So I'd be very interested to have a discussion with a few people on this point. Do PSA grade one of ones differently than a normal card? That's what I want to know. Yes, obviously there's only one of them, so theoretically it's going to be harder to get a 10. However, I sent a recent submission which had 4 one of ones on it. And when I was doing my pre-grade checks, obviously I'm not a genius, I'm not working for PSA, so I will never get it right. But I have quite a high accuracy in terms of guessing the grades. And I had 3 cards from the same set, all one of ones. And I placed them, I had them all out next to each other, all out their sleeves, and see if any of them had damage. Paper set, so I'm expecting 8, 9. Corners, a bit of wear to the corners. I had it under microscope and also under lights. I couldn't see any surface damage. And one card comes back below an 8 and one comes back a 9. And I will go into it in a lot more detail when I have the cards back, once I can actually analyze the card a bit more. But it's got me to this talking point, and I've been speaking to people about it. Going forward, do you just authenticate one of ones, or do you actually get them graded? And for me personally, from this moment on, I will never get a one of one graded again. I will authenticate them, but I won't get a grade on them because I am not confident in PSA and their ability to grade at the moment. And it's quite a big talking point, and this is where this is leading into my main discussion point for this episode of the Top Loaded podcast. And some of you might agree, some of you might not. And there is this discussion between PSA, SGC, Tag, CSG, CGC, sorry, Beckett, of where should you send your card? And it's all down to personal interest, personal preference. And at this point in time, PSA is always going to be king. It's always going to have that higher value of the cards. However, I believe now PSA are getting sloppier than ever in terms of there's no when it's any walk of life. It doesn't matter if it's grading a card, if you're grading a phone, if you're grading a painting, a car, whatever it may be. When something is subjective, how can you guarantee that it is a reliable service? And that is my personal opinion. That I don't know how many graders there were for PSA, but if you're grading millions of items per year, you've got a team of 200 graders. There is no way you can set a parameter on a website to say, if these are the issues, it's this, because it is subjective. I might see a card in a paper set and go, well, that's a paper set. It's good for a paper set, so I could give it a 9. But then you would have less issues on a Chrome card, but you would get an 8, or vice versa. There's a slight issue, and I've seen issue cards get a 10, and something called no issue get a 7. So it comes into this discussion of, obviously, you're always going to have the aspect of personal opinion, what mood it's an old joke of, what mood was my grader in this week? And I really do think it's getting to a point now where I'm really considering potentially completely stopping grading with PSA at the moment, because I'm not seeing any consistency. And when I have graded with other companies, I'm a big fan of SGC as a company, and their consistency is a lot better, in my personal opinion, than what PSA is. I know they're under the same ownership now, but grading is very different. I believe SGC do have better graders than PSA. No question of doubt, not even close, in my opinion. But then again, it comes to this thing of, that's still personal opinion. It's, do they know what cards they're looking at? And also, you've got to look at companies like Tag Now. Arena Club, I think, is another great example of using technology to actually enhance the grading experience. How many people out there? Well, I'm going to take a random card by my side, which I've got this Rosa Kafaji. This has got a 9. How many times have you got a card back from PSA and gone, so why's that got a 9? That's what people will go. This is where the technology is so good. Of when you get the pop report, the card starts spinning on your screen like this, and then scans, and the scan comes up with what defects, the percentage of it in line, and there's no transparency at PSA. Over a year ago, they said they're going to add in grader notes. I've still not seen any of these grader notes. So without this transparency of what issues are on with the cards, and I'm not accusing them, but for example, the Paul Skeens 1 of 1 MLB debut patch is a fixed stock card. The odds of that getting a 10 is very low. All right, Topps might have put it under more protection because it was such a high card. But when some of these big cards go through, it makes more sense for PSA as a company to grade it higher than another card. So when does it get to a point where we start really questioning the grading process of like PSAs and stuff like this? Of, do we still send cards? They'll always be king. They'll always get the biggest money for your card. However, the actual experience of grading PSA, I do not believe at the moment is it in line with what it should be. And I know we've heard a lot of times the owners of PSA and the CEOs have come out and said that it's a thing they are working on. And personal opinion is always going to be a differentiating factor, which I accept. I'm not saying that's wrong. However, how one person can see a card and see it as a 10 and one person sees it as an 8, it can change someone's life. I'm not even saying if this is your business, getting an 8 is probably going to be less than what you bought it for, but a 10 could be quadruple your money. So is it definitely a talking point, I would say, going forward about PSA and should you use other companies? Personally, for me, I'm a big fan of SGC, especially for retro stickers like my Arsene Wenger collection. But I'm honestly considering the likes of Tag or Arena Club for some of my PC bits. And I think it's definitely a conversation, and it's a great video for anyone out there who wants to watch it. Pac-Man in America, fantastic YouTuber, done a video of sending the same cards to each of the grading companies, and I would recommend you go and watch it because I think it's an absolute fantastic watch, and it does show you the differences between the companies, and it is personal opinion. So I don't want to talk about too much about grading because it's one of them that once you start, it's a very hard conversation. But I'm intrigued to see your personal opinions out there of where do you grade? Why do you grade? Do you not grade? You just keep mags. And I think it's one of them that is a ever growing conversation with the more people grade, the more people talking about it. But moving on to cards now, and a few other talking points that I've been bringing up, and obviously whatnot still haven't gone back on their opinion of the past shows, which I think is absolutely ludicrous and shambolic. Um, I really do think it's a matter of months left for Whatnot once other companies do launch. That feature is just a pure and basic security issue which they've overlooked, and weirdly that they've just stuck by. So I think they're making the bed, they're going to lie in it, and um, I don't think Whatnot will be doing as well as they are being the lone person in the industry. But another talking point, which I've been talking recently to a few people about, it's actually about selling cards. Um, what should you sell? Where should you sell it? And I think it's quite interesting because I think one of my caveats to the argument we was having was that when you're selling an item, the person who's selling it has got to be educated as well. There's, for example, if you have a Christian Pulisic card and you want the most amount for it, you sell it in the States. That's simple as. If you've got a low number like gold, it probably will do the best in the Far East. Or certain players will do certain, and it's learning. Will it do better at a card show? Will it do better on eBay? Will it do better on a consignment group website? And I think that's another thing. Obviously, not everyone has the time of day to be able to list up 100 cards on eBay because it's time consuming, especially if you've got a full time job, you're getting in at 9 to 5, you have something, food, relax. You don't want to be spending 4 hours then on eBay. But eBay has been getting quite good traction for a lot of people I've been speaking to, um, as well as card shows. I generally still do believe to this day that card shows are the best place to sell a card and most importantly to buy a card because you get to see the card before it arrives. You can see if there's any damage, you can have a look at it. But also, if you're selling it, you get instant cash. You get it in front of you. You don't have to worry about postage. Everyone knows what Royal Mail's like. You don't have to worry about them losing your card or opening it up and taking it home for their own PC. Um, but there is other options available, and I've been speaking to a few guys that send consignments out to the US, whether it's DC Sports 87, to name a few. There's a few others that they do use as well, so like Probstein. And now another viable option is if you grade via PSA and you put the cards in your vault, you can auction your cards off directly via PSA as well on eBay. So it's just knowing your cards. Do your research when selling. Have a look at the comps. But most importantly, have a look at the comps in England or like UK, Europe. Have a look at comps in America. And always remember, if you are selling to the UK, don't always comp it on the American price. Comps are just the guidelines. But you got to remember that for some people, they can't get that card in the UK, so they will pay a premium for it. Certain players will do better here than they do in China or they do in Germany. But like again, if you took a nice Jamal Musiala card in London, it might not sell. But you take it to Card Madness or Berlin Card Show, dang, that might sell straight away. So just know what you're selling. I think that's the main point of that talking point. And obviously, moving forward, we're going to get a few special guests on, but there's just a few things I want to talk about in this episode. So another question for the people listening and people I do bump into, say massive thank you for all your support. I had a gentleman come up to me at Dublin Card Show all the way from India who said he listened to the show, which I never expected. So we conquered another continent of the world. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you if you are listening. But who would you like to see on this year? What would you like? Is there any talking points you want me to talk about? Because I love going into a talking point. But obviously, the next section to round up the last 5 minutes is some of the recent pickups and grading returns. So I will briefly be back. I will just pause this, and by the time you know it's a second later, but I will get the cards to talk about recent pickups and grading returns. And just like that, we are back. Seems like I was gone for longer than what was. All right. So first of all, I just want to talk about one of my niche PCs that some people do know I collect, some people don't. If you see my Instagram page, you would have seen it. But me and a good friend, L_Trade Soccer, are massive Arsene Wenger collectors. And this is something that people don't see that often in terms of his cards being graded. So we are in the process, we're trying to get the highest pop for each of his Panini foot stickers for when he was in France in SGC. And got quite a few, so I'm going to just run through some here because people might just like seeing them. So if you are watching along, I'm going to just show off some here. So like you'll see like they're absolute classic stickers here. Obviously, these ones are different because they're actually different color back. So this is a 1987 foot. You've got like these are just like football heritage, in my opinion. You've got some of the nicest stickers, like proper designs. As you can see, I've got a couple of near enough every single one now. So yeah, and then getting to these two absolute beauties, his rookie and second year, absolutely fantastic stickers. And it's just this is a proper one of them PCs that his stickers are not that expensive. Obviously, grading's not that expensive, but people always say, and there's a saying in the hobby, if you just collect and collect what you want to collect and what you enjoy, then you'll never lose money on a card or sticker. And it's very true. Like for me, it's sentimental value as well. Arsene Wenger being the greatest manager in Arsenal Football Club history. You don't really see stuff much often as well. So quite a few of them, there's like stories to go with it, but just collect what you want. And going on now to the pickups, this is probably the section that everyone loves the most. And there's a story with both of these cards. So I'm going to start with this story. And I've got to say, before I show this card, a massive thanks to Trike Cards, one of the very good friends within the hobby. I had a card for him. You'll see it in his vlog when it comes out. Jamal Musiala Inception that he hit in a break from the huddle. I had it stored, and then I'm not normally speechless. Probably a good thing, like running and owning a podcast, not to be speechless a lot. But he gifted me this card, and it's too much. I didn't really want to accept it as a gift, but he insisted. It was this lovely red to 5 PSA 9 Steiner Black Stenius. Obviously, I'm a massive Steiner collector, and I'm still very touched to this day that he gifted me such a lovely card. And he's such a good friend of the podcast, person that one of the people I've got closest to probably in the hobby. And like I say to him, a massive thanks yet again for that gift. That's too much. He shouldn't have done it. A massive thanks to him. It was lovely seeing him and his girlfriend in Dublin, trying to convince me to get out to California. And I have promised him I will be heading out to California at some point in the future. So that would be good fun. And then this was the main card from what I purchased at the Dublin card show. Funny enough, bought it from Jason himself from Soccer Cards United. If me being a massive Katie McCabe fan, Katie McCabe collector, if I'm going to Ireland, I was coming back with a Katie McCabe card. That was simple as. But what card was I going to come back with? And there's one card. Well, there's two parallels that I've been chasing for years since it first come out. From the first Chrome of 2022, Topps Chrome, Fierce Case It. They done three parallels: the Super Fractor, Red Wave, and Orange Wave. And I've finally managed to pick up a parallel. And it won't do it justice, this angle on this camera. But this is an Orange Wave 25 of 25 PSA 10 Katie McCabe. And that was my main pickup. Absolutely massive thanks to the guys over at Soccer Cards United. Obviously, if you haven't listened to their podcast, go and listen to it. It's absolutely fantastic. They run a great show in Dublin as well. And massive thanks to Jason for doing such a fair deal on that card as well. It means a lot to be in my collection now. But like I say, it's been a great couple of weeks within the hobby. There's plenty of more shows coming up. I know a lot of people had a great time at Sports Card Social recently, just gone, and there's a few other shows upcoming as well, which I look forward to getting to. But like I say, a massive thanks yet again to the boys over at Third Down UK for powering up this episode of the Top Loaded Podcast. Whether you need car supplies, custom car stands, great preparation kits, or whatever they offer, use TTP10 at checkout to save 10% off. And a massive thank you yet again for all the absolutely incredible support on the channel recently and all the lovely kind words. It means a lot, and it means this will keep on going while people are listening. So a massive thanks. I hope everyone out there is doing well, staying safe, buying, selling, trading, and all that good jazz. But most importantly, happy hobbying and good night.